Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Play podcast, where we look to develop and promote a positive youth sports experience. As always, we are available for speaking and private engagements and can be reached at info@justgoplay.ca. You can also catch full video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit us at justgoplay.ca. Enjoy the episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Just Go Play podcast. I'm your host, Coach D, also known as Daryl Devenish. I'm here today with my hosts, Matt Young and Stan Peake, Executive Business Coach. We got a great show for you today. I'm excited because we're really getting down to the nitty gritty now. Stan, real quick, can you just give a quick introduction of yourself and what you're doing and why you're at the front of the room today and why where we're gonna go today with this conversation?
Yeah, happy to. First of all, thank you both for having me, gentlemen. It's a pleasure. Obviously, we share a connection and a passion for sports, physical activity, physical lifestyles, and passing that on to the next generation. So happy to support the great work you're doing and want to give as much value as possible to your audience to help further the work you're doing. But yeah, my connection is really from athletics. So typical. I get to hang on to if I didn't have this horrible football injury, I might have made it to the pros. I think we all know I was no threat to go pro, but really an athletic injury led me into a career in health and fitness. Was a very passionate personal trainer. I like to know how things work. And so that led me from business as, in the business of personal training to actually owning a couple of businesses. I have to give credit where credit is due. And through the course of that trajectory, met the good-looking fella in the cap there, who I still consider one of my chief mentors to this day and one of my best friends. So, as much as it's an honor to be here, I wouldn't be here without Matt. And I learned a ton about business, which is in parts through Matt and other mentors I've been fortunate enough to learn from. After selling my second business, it was really going back to the roots of coaching people. That's what I love. That's how I went from kind of athletics into business coaching. Always been passionately curious about business, but still obviously passionate about health, wellness. You can't perform at your highest levels in sport or business if you don't take care of your mental and physical and spiritual health. So long preamble, but jazzed to be here for a number of reasons.
Unbelievable. That's
amazing, Stan. What we really like about having you on the show today is because, the saying is you're not a great leader unless you've created other leaders who have created other leaders. So it's not just one cycle down, it's two cycles down, and you've done that. So in your business right now, you're basically taking new entrepreneurs and you're helping them discover their vision, mission, value, whole process, which we really want to dive into today, because that's what we think is missing. And why we are excited for you is because you are the hybrid, like you said. You came from a sports background, you've coached before, you've coached people, athletes, teams, kids, business leaders. You're a coach. And you and I talk all the time about how, coaching is, and the process of coaching, it doesn't have to be in its own silo. So, a great coach is a great parent, is a great manager, is a great business leader, is a great partner, is a great worker. So there's no specific little secret sauce for each one, because they're all transferable. So that's what we want to share. We want to pick your brain with your process and really apply it to the youth sports space, because as we know, typically what we see in the youth sports space is, hey, who's got the strongest heartbeat? You're now leading and operating, this association or this team or this year or, this endeavor. And what we want to ask you, Stan, is your thoughts. What do you think about this? Are we doing it right? Is there a better way?
First of all, I'm glad we're starting at the start, and what a great question. And, I'm going to kind of pull parallels from sport and business, because I think they're important. I think they're important for a number of reasons, because if we look at a business that is doing millions or even billions of dollars a year in revenue, one way we can really measure that business is to say that it's sustainable, right? As entrepreneurs that you both are, we know the expression that cash is oxygen for any business. Without it, you can't survive, right? So that's one metric in the business world that we would measure any business by, even not for profits, because we still have to know to the board of directors, are we compliant? Are we saving money that we're not telling people, or are we losing money and we need to fundraise? In the sport world, and I know this is a point of contention for you both, which is why you're building the foundation the way you are, is that sometimes because it's volunteer or because it's community, that gives leave for some people to cut corners on the fundamentals. And I don't care what business you're in. If you're in sport, you're in a business. If you are in church, there are business components to what you're doing. And I just, to answer your question with that preamble, Matt, I think it's so important that everybody realize, anyone that could be listening or that you guys get in front of, you are doing it the right way. And my litmus test for that is that there are pre-revenue startups that I've worked with, companies that have yet to make a dollar, that are sometimes operating with better fundamentals than teams that I've worked with in organizations doing north of $20 billion a year in sales. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's absolutely crazy. And you think at that level, when you are a publicly traded company and you're responsible to produce shareholder returns every single quarter, and they're still sometimes not operating from a place of having the vision entrenched at the soul level, getting everybody in the organization inspired by the vision and what you're there to do. By the way, in the business world, I like the concept of vision. The definition of vision and purpose is why you must exist beyond making money. And for you guys, you might have different definitions of that. One that I think is important for youth sport is why you must exist beyond winning games. And I'm sure we're on the same page there, teaching the life skills that sports can, that team sports can, knowing your role. I mean, come on, you guys are the experts here, but we know there's so much that happens on the ice, on the court, on the field, beyond who won or lost. And I think we have to have people beyond that vision in order to do anything great in sport, or else we get lost behind the right metrics and we lose our focus.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to draw something that you said. Youth sport is a business. And, what we see people that are coming in and running the business. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, nowhere in our 20 years did we throw the keys to a volunteer with no business experience, no operations manual, and say, here, have the keys to the kingdom. You just wouldn't see that in business. So we're kind of solution focused. Stan, what in your mind needs to happen at the youth sport level, combining the business coaching, leadership development, and things that you bring to the table, and not a pitch for yourself, but what do you think needs to happen to up the ante in terms of the quality of the experience in youth sport?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think the one word answer would be alignment. And I think where that, if I could add some context, I feel like, and sport is not the only industry. So I think it's really important that while we're all solution oriented, that we are actually solution oriented, not pointing our fingers and blame. Because sport is definitely not the only sector where you have people fighting for market share as opposed to building a multifaceted solution.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a quick example. Like in the business of health, as opposed to the business of sport, if Daryl is a medical doctor and Matt is a naturopathic doctor and I'm a chiropractor and we all share the same patient, there's the very real possibility that Daryl says, I'm the one to cure you. And Matt goes, no, I'm the one to cure you. And I say the same thing, because we all think from our lens, we're the solution for the customer, the client, the constituent, whoever you want it to be. And one of the frustrations that I have as a parent of a kid who plays multiple sports is the fact that they're, even pre-COVID, I understand restrictions in COVID where you don't want multiple cohorts for the same kid. You don't want to spread the infection. Let's table that. I'm talking about coaches that say, oh, you're playing hockey, can't play football, or you're playing football, can't play baseball.
Right.
Because that is where you're limiting your market cap in order to achieve market share. That's the business vernacular. Okay, if we put it to the youth sports world, you're actually limiting your child's overall athletic development and life experience because you've got short-term silo thinking saying, this is my athlete. One more thing I want to build on what you said, which I totally believe: great leaders develop great leaders who develop great leaders. You know, anyone we coach, we're all coaches here. None of our athletes, none of our business owners, none of our executives belong to us. Okay? We are there for a season. We're there for a few seasons. And our job is to put them back into their lives more capable, more focused, and hopefully more grounded and aligned with ethics. So there's no ownership here. We can't have ownership over the process, over the market. And the last thing I'll say in terms of, you know, curative issues is that there needs to be organizational support and infrastructure where the experts can be experts at what they are experts at, like coaching baseball or strength and conditioning for volleyball or certifying coaches. But those all have to live in an ecosystem that could centralize. Here's a framework for long-term athletic development. Here's how you organize your parent meetings. Here's how you organize your stakeholders. Instead of people thinking they can do all of those things. I'm a business coach. I don't know everything about business, and I don't solve all the business challenges for my clients. So I think it's time that we took a less arrogant view, if I could be so bold to say, about our capability and role in youth sports to create better infrastructure that makes everybody win.
Yeah, notwithstanding great dialogue, notwithstanding the fact that it should be even a more or less arrogant view when you're coming in and you've got no business and leadership experience, you know, and you're not beholden to any attract, retain, or growth metrics. So most of the organizations in the youth sports sector, they can't even report on their you know, their success or gaps or areas of opportunity because we're not even taking those key metrics.
Right.
But one thing that I want to say, and sorry, Daryl, I'm dominating here. I'll let you speak. One thing that I want to pile in on, Stan, is coaches do not own the players. You know, that is a key message for parents and for athletes, because for years, and what we're fighting is tradition, and tradition sometimes gets in the way of innovation. For years, that's been the mentality. I am sending my son or daughter to said coach because said coach is the expert and they are going to tell us, you know, what to do, how to train, what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. That is such a good point. And I want to make sure our audience heard that because I couldn't agree. Daryl?
Man, listen to you two guys talk. It's crazy here. What I'm taking right now, and Stan, help me if I'm wrong here, is we have a bunch of people running businesses, youth sports, and they're not business people. How do we, like, in your opinion, Stan, how can we, or what program, or how can we set these people up for success? Like, I know Matt said we're about solutions now, because we can point fingers and we can say this organization's crap. They just want to win. They don't know how to, you know, they don't care about the players, or they don't care about all the stakeholders. And Matt, you just talked about the coaches. How can we help these people who aren't business people? Like what form of education, or what should they be doing? Like, and I don't want to go any further, but that's what I'm hearing. Is we have business people, we've got people running a business that aren't business people. Where do you start with?
You know, it's a great question. And I think the answer is to allow them to triple down on their strengths. Because here's the thing, I guarantee you that if there was a possibility where they could let go, coaches, let's say, if coaches could let go of the business administrative aspects of their role, almost 100% of them would gladly give you back the keys. If they could just coach, and the infrastructure, administration, policy making, leadership, governance, succession, if all those parts were done by central authorities and the coaching was left to them, wouldn't they be happier?
100%.
Exactly. Yep. Right. Like, I know that, you know, where I'm good in business actually where I'm great in business, and if I could let everything else go, is around people. If I have to run the profit and loss statement and do financial forecasting, yes, I can do it. That's a stretch skill. But am I the best one in the world to do it? Am I the best one in the company to do it? No. So if someone said to me, hey, you spend more time developing your people and I'll take care of the pro forma, the P&L, our budgeting, our rolling forecast, I'm going to give that person a hug. Okay. That's not a blow to my ego because I'm not great at that. And the reason I think people are, reticent to do that is, again, it's tradition, it's history. Like you said, Matt, it's just the existing structure. And I want to be real clear that if I point fault at a system, I'm not pointing fault at the current players. I'm pointing fault in the mirror because I coached for 10 years. I'm pointing fault at the coaches that came before me. I guarantee, Matt, we both played football together. What's the first exercise any football coach taught you in the weight room?
How to toughen up, how to be a man, bench press.
Bench press, exactly. Bench press. Probably the least functional exercise you have for a football player, right? We should have been learning agility, triple jump, you name it. But what happens? That's the exercise that was measure of a man that their coach taught them. There's no there's no evolution, right?
You coach. The thing is, you coach the way you were coached.
That's right. And if you always coach the way you were coached, that there's a gap there, because athletes are better today, right? Athletes are better for so many reasons, right? They're better mentally, they're better physically, they're better nutritionally. We understand the importance of sleep and stress, all those things, right? So if the coaching environment is evolving in terms of strategy, if the nutritional environment is evolving in the sense that we know food is fuel, right? We don't eat a huge plate of spaghetti before we run a 10K anymore, then we have to evolve all the time. We have to look at every aspect of our business and our business infrastructure and keep up with the times. I shouldn't be running the P&L. Coaches shouldn't be the ones implementing, with no advice, no structure, no support, leadership modules.
Okay, so I'm gonna springboard off that, Daryl, because I'm gonna get back to your question, because we come from the franchise business. So you have franchisor, general manager, franchisee, and you see I didn't do the hierarchy. I went across, because no one's more important or less important than the other. So franchisor, two main responsibilities. Number one, promote the hell out of the business. Number two, make sure that we have created an operations manual that makes it as easy as possible for the franchisees to achieve success, whether that success is money, impact, legacy, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Make it easy. Okay, so that's the franchisor, two primary roles. Then we have the general manager. General manager's two primary roles. Number one, make sure that any innovation, question, concerns are taken care of. If not, elevate it to the franchisor. Number two, make sure the franchisees are operating in compliance with the operations manual. Okay, then the third participant, most important, customer facing, is the franchisee. Two primary responsibilities. Number one, service the hell out of the clients, make sure that their experience is unbelievable, unparalleled. And number two, make sure they're operating in compliance with the operations manual. Okay, so three different roles. You've heard me say operations manual 3 different times. To Stan's point, where is the operations manual for youth sport? There is not one. So when there isn't one, you deflect back to what Stan pointed out, which is you're just doing what you've always been taught. You're coaching the way you've been coached. You're leading the way you've been led. You're running the youth sport organization like you do your daily job at the post office or whatever business that you're in. There's no operations manual that's being created to help and support the least educated and the most self-interested people at the foundation of our youth sports system. And to me, that is the biggest gap. That's the opportunity, and that is one of the solutions. Create an operations manual and find mechanisms that we can hold people accountable to the proper sport outcomes and processes, milestones, key metrics. For me, Daryl, I think that's where the opportunity lies to really, start to turn this Titanic around and get back to what youth sport was designed to be, which you've both said is a dress rehearsal for real life.
When you're coming
I would quickly, sorry, I just want to quickly piggyback off that. Then Daryl, I'll stop stealing the mic from you as well.
Okay.
Let's reframe those three responsibilities in segments, like you said, Matt, because that's the business, the franchise business, which is the perfect analogy for running any effective system. So really what I heard there is you've got basically infrastructure, you've got quality control, and you've got execution. And if you were to break up your system in formats like that, there would be a clear segmentation of roles. And if you were to ask a bunch of athletic administrators, coaches, people like that, who wants to be an infrastructure, setting policy, how many coaches would put their hand up? And if you were to say, who's in quality control, how many coaches would put their hand up? Maybe a couple. But who wants to be in execution? All the coaches' hands goes up. It's just reframing. And if we expose people to the gaps in the system, not in themselves, everybody would be on board with the solution. And by the way, instead of a national dollars going to things like own the podium campaigns, a performance metric, it should be going to infrastructure like, why wouldn't Hockey Canada, Soccer Canada, Football Canada all come together with the central, tenants and then individual branches? Here's the specialized part of football, the specialized part of hockey. We're on the same page. Daryl, I made you wait long enough. Back to you, brother.
I think you guys, you hit it, because what I'm hearing, and I'm going to speak to the plain people out there that need to break this all down, is leadership and planning has to happen. And
Yes.
if this doesn't happen, we're in trouble. And this is after this pandemic, it disappears. If you don't have a good plan and leadership and a framework or infrastructure, as you say it, you're going to be in trouble, because people aren't just going to automatically sign up or join your program anymore. They need to, there has to be a reason. There has to be a substantial reason that I'm coming back. I love my experience, my sports experience. My kid it was amazing there for them to come back. So as Matt, you laid that out pretty well with the franchise model. If these groups, sports organization, youth sports, don't take this seriously, this is the beginning of the end. Because it will only be the kids that are willing to pay a ton of dough, and then we got no one else. The participation route is dead. It will die. That's my view. I don't know what you guys think, but it's the end, because I know in this area right now, the only kids playing hockey right now or on the ice are AAA kids. I talked to a lot of AA kids, single A kids, or just the participation kids. None of them are in the rink. None of them.
It's such a great point, Daryl. And I think it's, if you'll allow me, I want to build an economic case for exactly what you're talking about. Because first of all, the important metric, the most important outcome we can drive is the joy and the participation of kids. And I think you guys, your mantra is, as great an experience as possible for as long as possible for as many as possible, which I love. Now, here's the business case for why that is the right outcome, and all the process, because the experience of the coach is going to dictate the experience of the player. If the coach is pissed off because they're behind budget and they have all these things that they don't want to deal with, but they have to, then the best version of themselves is not showing up as soon as they put the hat, the clipboard, and the whistle together. Right? So that's the coaching, that's the emotional state, and how that there's transference over there. But let's go back to the business case. Pre-COVID, 46 cents out of every tax dollar was going to healthcare in Canada. You can imagine with COVID, that's going way up to look for, a vaccine, to, hospital beds, to, they're converting some businesses into remote hospitals for all this. So I think it doesn't take an economist to realize that now more than 46 cents of every tax dollar is going into healthcare, which we all know is mostly sick care. And we know that youth sports, there's a degree of subsidization from the government. Well, the thing is, TELUS has done studies on the benefit, the ROI of preventative health spending. And the ratio is somewhere between 1 to 5 or even 1 to 20. So let's do the math here, fellas. Instead of spending half of their entire operational budget on sick care, if they were to shift that same spend into preventative health spending, and of course, athletics and sports is one great way to do that, nutrition being another, mental health being another. Instead of half the budget dollars going to sick care, if there's a 1 to 5 or 1 to 20 ratio, then instead of 50 cents of every tax dollar going to sick care, it'd be more like 10 cents. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as entrepreneurs, if somebody showed you how to decrease your expenses without degrading the quality of your product or service by 40%, would you like to have 40% of your revenue drop down to your bottom line? Just wondering.
Yeah, but what you're talking about makes sense, and that's the, you know, we talk about this all the time, all three of us, is that leadership is about doing the right thing, not doing what's popular.
Right.
And in that case that you're giving, and I totally agree, but you know, the standing in front of air because you can't really quantify the proactive preventative side isn't as sexy as standing beside a hospital with a big pair of scissors cutting a ribbon and looking like the star and getting all the votes from that community. So that's a different political thing that you've talked about. But Stan, you made a really good point, and you know, I just want to follow it up in the sports space. So the sports space, and Daryl, you said it. You know what COVID? I read a quote this morning. COVID showed how this youth sport sector is set up to make money off of kids, because on one hand, we always hear about all of the, hey, listen, we don't have enough budget, we can't do it, we're running lean, we're running tight. On the other hand, in Canada, it's an $8.7 billion a year business. In the United States, it's a $12 billion a year business. Okay, well, so who's winning there? So if it's a $12 and $8 billion business, by the way, with no oversight, no governance, no nothing, which would never happen in any private business, but that's not my point. If it's that big of a business, then Daryl, your point about and pre-COVID, we already saw and heard the cries. Listen, this is not working. This system is breaking. Okay, you know, we just got carried away like we do in everything in life. You know, free market capitalism started to cannibalize the sport experience for many, and it started to deteriorate because Daryl, like you said, you know, it was the high performance, the AAA kids only. It's only about them. And all their parents, and you know, my son or daughter is going to make the show, and this is going to be great. So therefore, this justifies our mortgaging this, taking a second mortgage in the house, even though we all know 1.5% of those people will actually make it to the show, and even less those will stay. So the question, Daryl, doesn't become, you know, that's common sense. And Stan, you just, you know, Freakonomics. You just gave the whole common sense and the economics of it. But Daryl, how do we educate parents? How do we separate that emotional attachment to wanting the best for our kids, and we got the Venetian blinders on, we're being sold the dream, and I don't care what Stan says, Matt says, Daryl says, anyone says, I don't care what the percentages are, I don't care if I have a better chance of winning the lottery or getting struck by lightning, I am doing this for our kid. How do we change that? You too.
You first, Daryl.
Well, it's a lot of conversations with parents because they've been, I don't want to say brainwashed, because I'm one of those parents. You don't, once your kid has reached a certain level, especially if they're a high performance kid, and again, I don't want to like just talking about high performance kids because they are just a small fraction of what's out there. We should be really focusing on the masses, and that's the participation model. But these high performance kids seem to get all the airplay because they're spending the big bucks. They're the ones that are seeking out the best coaches. They're the ones that you see in the paper. Like, nobody glamorizes participation, house league and whatnot, or fun anymore. It's all about this kid just won the state championship, or these are the the champions of the hood. So we have to go back and say, what are these kids going to remember at the end of their day? Parents have to chime in now and understand that all we really want is our kids to have great sports experiences and play for as long as possible in the best environment possible. And this is, if this COVID thing has taught me anything, it's reaffirmed that my kid has to have fun. Play basketball. He learned how to play basketball during this time. He's playing spike ball. He's learning some different games, peripheral games. Like, it's more about participation and having fun and meeting people. And as you said, the dress rehearsal for life, as opposed to him winning Canadian championship in hockey. Because that probably won't happen, but that has to get into parents' heads, that you want your kids to be engaged, involved, and have great quality sports experiences. And until
no better time than now, because
that message,
what you're saying is, hey, listen, parents are like, holy smokes, I got more money. Holy smokes, I got more time. I'm not traveling around anymore. Holy smokes, it wasn't winning that my kids missed. It wasn't the tournaments that my kids missed. It was just hanging around with their friends. So this is the perfect time to hit that reset button.
And that's,
I agree.
And that's what my son, he misses his friends.
Yeah.
He doesn't miss winning a championship. He misses his friends. And that's the thing that's got him down. And so that I'll leave it there. But we need to have parents have to have conversations with themselves and their kids and say, hey, man, we got to maybe change what we're doing and start doing other things. We're a family again. We got to hang out with each other and not just live in a sports field or a rink or whatnot. So, Stan?
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, you guys have a marketing problem on your hands. Not how you two are marketing. You've got a marketing problem on behalf of the entire sport industry to solve that problem. To Matt's point, you've got a window of opportunity. Now, if anyone who's got skin in the game in sports, and that their self-preservation rests on sport participation, that's where I think central dollars can be amalgamated to tell the right story right now from the mouths of kids and parents that are starting to wake up. And when I say you got a marketing problem on your hands, here's the thing, right? When everything's going the way it's going, take COVID out of it, and we're not having this window of opportunity, then you got busy parents in the rat race. Why? Because they're trying to feel significance. That's really the base driver. They're trying to feel like they matter. That's why they take the job, get the bigger house, get the car, whatever. And in that same pursuit of significance, all of a sudden their kid, and if they're in tier 1 or div A or whatever, is an extension of their ego, right? So if the kid doesn't fare well, then that seems like a negative commentary on their social status, their worth, you name it. And that's a problem, because the ego, which is the least mature, if you want to go Freudism here, the ego is the least mature version of us that's going to show up, okay? And that is the one that's going to show up when we are in a place of feeling insecure. And guess what happens? When all the parents come together for the first time in the year, and that's when evaluations happen, there is this social dynamic that's playing out, not on the ice, but in the locker room with the parents during the parent meeting. Who's got more money? Who's cooler? Who's sexier? Who's this? Who's that? Who's got a better job? And where the kids show up on the roster fuels that. So what I'm saying is, and I'll be the unpopular guy here, is that from a place of insecurity, that is where those decisions are made about living vicariously through our kids. And then the elite sports schools manipulate that because they speak to the insecurity and they fuel it. They validate it. They go, no, Daryl, your kid has got promise. You must have done something right. Boom. Okay. And I'll tell you this, like, even for people that are watching their dollars, their kids and their dogs is where they blow their budget. That's where emotional spending shows up the most. Really quickly on the marketing problem, 70% of all purchases across all industries are made to ease pain, not to acquire something. If you think of base human drivers, we tend to seek out pleasure and avoid pain. But we avoid pain 70% of the time, and we only seek out pleasure 30% of the time. How is that a marketing problem? Because if you're talking about do the right thing because it's the right thing, then you show up as a nice to have. But if you go, this fills your emotional void right now, it's a need to have. And that's why the sport specialization is allowed to perpetuate. Because guys, Matt, you said it, 1.5% of these people that you're charging tens of thousands go pro. So if they were measuring ROI, their businesses would tank, but they're not measuring ROI. They're manipulating a weak, fragile emotional state.
Right. And is it working? No, it's not working, because the decline in the sport participation rate is telling us it's not working. Yet we're still doing it because we're beholden to, I got to keep my job. We got to keep this thing rolling. And once it's rolling, and nobody wants it to come down, but it's coming down. Right. Wow, Stan, you know what? Getting back to the beginning of this conversation, Stan and Daryl, we talked about leadership, and I really hope that parents who are listening to this podcast, Daryl, have made it this far to hear what Stan just said, because that was laid out, and that's the thing that needs to be, that's the communication piece that's missing, in my opinion, to parents, the straight goods on your role as a leader of your child. And Stan, at the beginning of this conversation, you said something that was really profound. And coaches, you don't own the players. You're not the property of the players. Well, in the same way, I hate to say it, parents, you don't own your kids' success. That is not your success to have. That is their success. In the old, and again, I hate to say in the old days, because it makes us all look like old people, but we are old people. Their parents weren't even at the pitch. They weren't even in the rink at the pitch, because they were busy living and doing their own thing. Their own thing wasn't, the children weren't a part of their own thing. The children were the children. Go learn. We'll provide you with this, 18, get out, time to go, blah, 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 blah. But now, we've got the friend steps up. So I want to get back to what you said, at the beginning of the top of the hour here. It's really about that leadership, that responsibility. And Daryl, I think you're right. If we don't package this in a manner which actually seeks to engage the parent, not educate them, because no parent wants to be educated. If we don't engage the parent in these conversations as part of an operation system, then it's never going to stop. And this hamster wheel, like Stan alluded to, is just going to keep spinning round and round and round until the ball bearings wear out and it grinds to a halt.
You know what? I'm going to use the most unlikely of references, Matt, to jump on that point. If you guys ever see the movie Bad Moms, it's hilarious. And what's interesting is that the whole premise of the movie is that these super moms, and I'll say parents instead of moms because it's 2020, we don't have to be sexist. It's these super parents feel like they need to have a full-time job. They also need to volunteer. They also need to be at all three of their kids' games, practices, piano recital, whatever. So I think the window of opportunity is actually to take the burden off the parents and say, your kid doesn't need to speak 3 languages, play 4 instruments, 6 sports, and get straight A's. Because that's not a dress rehearsal for life. That's a dress rehearsal for burnout and overcommitment. So take the pressure off the kid, take the pressure off the parent, have some free time. Have some time where you're bored, you don't know what to do. Go for a walk, build a puzzle, maybe get to know each other as a family. And if we could take the pressure off, that society isn't judging you based on all these things, there's your emotional window of opportunity, not to educate, like you said, but to actually release parents from the pressure of being perfect. That's my hope.
Wow. I've never heard anybody spin it off like that, guys. Like, honestly, Stan, you said something today that I wish I could tell parents, right, about the ego thing. And you know what? I'm feeling it myself, because some of my earlier doings with my kids was about my own ego, and maybe I didn't make it, but I know what I did wrong. I'm going to make sure they don't do it wrong. So, and I think that's why a lot of parents come down and try and, I didn't make it. My dad wasn't at my games and my mom wasn't at my games. But I know if I had someone that would just took me, like just supported me the right way, I might have made it. So maybe some of these parents feel that way, that I'm not missing the game. I'm my kid's agent. And they're not Jerry Maguire.
Right.
And they're messing with them. And I think we have to step back. And like you said, let them play, let them have fun. And I think we're getting set up here for some next steps here.
Well, and
We
let
definitely
the
have you back on the show, man.
oh, anytime. And by the way, you don't have to tell the parents. You're welcome. I get to be the asshole.
Oh yeah.
Just say, hey, can you believe this guy? What he said about
Yeah,
parents? You go.
In a second.
You're welcome. Let
I
me be the bearer of bad news.
You know I'm going to say that. I can't believe that dude said that, man.
Exactly.
I didn't know he was going to say that, people. I swear.
Exactly. Trojan horse. I'll be your Trojan horse.
So Stan, we like to end with first steps, and just sort of, it's our way of wrapping up and giving parents or listeners what's some 3 important things that can take away from this podcast today that you summarize. Like, these are the takeaways. If you're going away, this is what you got to go away with. Can you give us 3?
Happy to, and I'm gonna put 3. They may not be 3 sequential steps, but there'll be 3 different lenses that I would maybe look through. So the first one is really the centralization of sport infrastructure, and I think this is the call out to all the big sport organizations, the Nikes of the world, the Hockey Canada, the NHL, any professional sport franchise, sport organization, youth sport infrastructure. It is in your not just best interest, but it is in your own sustainability to carve out a portion of your operating budget for central infrastructure. Build it once, maintain it, it's done, and then, as Billy goes into my next point, is that let go. I don't mean stay in your lane in a bossy way. I mean, let go from the pressure of feeling like you have to be all these things. That goes to parents, that goes to coaches, that goes to administrators. If you let go and focus where you're probably most passionate, you're going to be of greatest service. It's interesting because Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours, but a lot of people forget the back half of that sentence of intentional practice. Guys, if you give me a guitar for 10,000 hours, number 1, 10,000 hours from now, I'm going to be pissed off. Number 2, 10,000 hours from now, I'm still going to suck as a musician. Okay? So if you let go and you focus on the lane that you could be brilliant in, better results for everybody. And the third thing is, and we talk about this a lot, Matt, I know, is you got to measure what matters. So we can talk about all these solutions, but we have to be holding people accountable to sport participation numbers, and then whether those are on the rise or the decline. We also have to hold sport and our government accountable to health metrics, because guess what? If we live, what are we saying this whole hour, right? We got to unsilo sports. We got to break down sports and silos in sports. Well, we got to go one step further than that, and we have to break silos in our society, because sports is part of medicine. It's part of, healthcare, not sick care. It's part of nutrition. And those things should all be integrated at an even higher level. What does that look like? I don't know, but I think you guys are the ones that are going to light the spark, that's going to light the fire, that's going to lead to sweeping change. And one day, because of the backs of hard workers like you, visionaries like you, we're going to have solutions. And they'll talk about the dark ages where things were done the way we saw them done. So if I could be a small help to you guys in the profound work you're doing, that's the only thank you I'll ever need. And happy to come back anytime. Appreciative of the opportunity. And I just applaud you both, as well as those in your ecosystem that are fighting to make things better for our kids.
Oh no, don't worry, man. I just put you on speed dial. We're going to have you back. Matt,
done.
You got 3 for us? Or just a couple of points, because he said them so well there.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to repeat what he said, what Stan said. First steps: take stock of what's happening right now in COVID. You got more money in your pocketbook. Your family's happier. There's probably less stress, and you're not traveling and running all around hell's half acre trying to make things happen. So take stock in that as parents, as coaches, as administrators in the sports system, because if you don't take stock of that, then you're going to go right back to what's going on, and it's just going to be infinitely more pressure. That's not how to do it. So that's step one for that demographic. I do agree with Stan. Sport organizations at the national level, Olympic federations, it should be the International Olympic Committee, whose sole mantra is sport for health and a driver of social, etc. Create the freaking operations manual. Stan said infrastructure, I'll say operations manual for the grassroots level of sport, and put in markers so that the least educated and most self-interested people have some checks and balances in sport. You do that, you will change sport. You continue to say that's not your job, you will continue, you will be complicit in the demise of sport, like you said, Daryl. So that's the first steps for all those people, if they ever think to listen, or if anyone else thinks, hey, you know what, this would be a great podcast for me to slide under the door of somebody in a position of decision-making power. And my third step is as a consumer, know what to expect and know what you should expect from your sport experience. And that's at all stakeholder levels: officials, coaches, athletes, parents, and even administrators. Know what you should expect. Know what 5 things that you should expect from your youth sport experience, 5 things you're going to need to do to contribute to your youth sport experience. And again, that comes through, like Stan alluded to, the infrastructure or the operations manual. So those would be my first step suggestions.
Unbelievable. So as usual, I'm last, but everything you guys have said, ditto. But I'm going to leave with one. All the stakeholders right now, organizations, parents, coaches, athletes, it's time to recess. We have the biggest opportunity to start fresh right now. This is the time. After this pandemic is over now, now's the time to take inventory, as Matt said, reassess what's happened, and look where you want to go, because it cannot continue the way it was continuing. It will not work. It will die. And we all know that we want quality sports experiences for our kids. We want more kids participating. So my feedback today, or my first steps, would be take inventory. It's time. We have the biggest opportunity to make the biggest impact right now. Gentlemen,
Love it. Build it back better.
Yeah, love it.
Guys, thank you for being here today. As usual, I'm always speechless at the end, because I get goosebumps and stuff, because it was like, man, there's so much good information we shared. If you're listening to this podcast and you like it, please share it with people who need to hear it. Thank you. Stan, you were awesome, brother. Thank you. Matt, I was a Kubla Kai. Thank you.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
Just go play, everyone. Just go play.